Hey Internet, it's Gunter with MiniMishaps. Happy Friday, which means it is time for another one of our DIY Universe series. And today, because it is Pluto Day, we are going to be talking about death in RPGs, specifically regarding the GetherVerse. So this is no shortage of discussion among DMs and GMs and players. How do you balance character death with not having high stakes? So if your character can't die, then there's no stakes, and if your character dies, obviously that can also impede the fun that's had by the player or the whole group. And so the system that we have worked out for the GetherVerse essentially gives you and the GM options for what can happen at the moment of death instead of death. And those can be big character additions, meaning a flaw or a new personality type or some kind of big change. It can be a time to retire the character to becoming an NPC so they can still be in the world if that's the way that works best for the group. But it also can mean that their soul is trapped in their weapon, or their spirit needs to travel with the group and adventure with the group until a body can be recovered or built or found. I mean, there are time traveling options and different things, but the main premise that is probably going to have some feedback from the other DMs out there is, for the GetherVerse, there does not need to be character death. Now, if the player and the GM both think that that would help the story and be enjoyable for the group, there's no stopping death if you wanted to have the death. But encouraging you to come up with creative solutions to have the consequences be there and be permanent, but not necessarily force a player to part with a character that they love. So, if you want temporary stakes, death could mean a respawn or a teleport away, or there are options that way as well. But the main function of this idea is that death is only permanent if that's what's most fun for all. And that could be if the player is excited to have a glorious moment of ending their character. That is a good way to have that happen. But the biggest thing, and so the setup to the death is what we should talk about next, which is if you simply have the players fall off a cliff or do something where they're well beyond their level, that is an unfair character death. And these are the worst kind of, if you want to create a rift in the group, then have an unfair character death. Now, obviously, there's the opposite, which is a character that wants to be a murder hobo or is simply seeking death by dumb choices that they really, really want to make for their character. Then, yeah, you sometimes might have to warn them that there are going to be those consequences. But the best option that I like to have is a single last check on a d20, and doesn't have any modifiers and is not related to any skill, but it's just sort of a luck check, a universe check at the moment of death. And if they roll a 1, maybe they die. If they roll a 1, they might also be cursed, or they may be trapped inside of another of the player character's mind, something like that. And if they roll a nat 20, then there would be fine. They wouldn't have add any death-related options, and then kind of the spectrum span in between. The same actually goes for our villains and NPCs. The villain that doesn't stay dead, there is one very strong kind of enjoyment from finishing off and killing the villain that is at the end of a long story arc, especially if they've been playing the characters for a while. But there's also that comic book feel of, you know, if the villain is able to come back, then they can haunt or bother a whole new set of players, and the villain would come back with new skills, new insights, new plans, and maybe they shift from a general villain that was defeated by the heroes and had no knowledge of the heroes at all to one that takes it upon themselves to come after the heroes specifically. So the other options for death apply to the villains and NPCs as well. And then as far as the last reason would be, it's a way to protect your favorite characters and NPCs, because especially for me, I go into a table of players I've never met. I'm hired to run the session for them, and you know, they have all kinds of varying ideas of if they want to be a murder hobo, if they want to just rampage, if they want to run an evil character, if they fill in the blank. And the creative solutions for death allows there to be a little buffer between them and the iconic NPCs or the really important characters or the plot hook that they'll need later. Can't just be killed without the story falling apart, those kinds of things. So I encourage you in your games as a player, offer these to your GM. As a GM, offer these to your players. Alternatives to death, whether it is trapped inside an item, cursed, become a spirit, get trapped inside of another character's mind, time travel, you know, adventure in the underworld, have a quest for a deity for a boon. I mean, there's a million different options, but I encourage you, especially within if you're playing the GetherVerse system, that the story shouldn't end unless that is the way that all the players and the GM want that to go, because there's nothing worse than starting a new character you have no attachment to in a group full of people that have been playing their characters forever. So watch out for death, and that's it. If you like this video, you can like and subscribe, support us on Patreon, and we'll explore more of the GetherVerse next time in Chapter 3, which will just leave as an all kinds of party kind of title spoiler there for you. So we'll see you guys in a week for this series. Thanks, Internet.